Kasten K10 is so easy to install, I'll have you running from a VM to the dashboard in less than 45 minutes. You gotta see this. Stick around. I don't want to go any further until I thank my friend and colleague from work, Tim Myers. He's a business solution architect with Veeam. He vetted the majority of the material that's in this video as far as the commands and where they came from to make sure things work correctly. And I wanted to list his contact information on Twitter as well as mine and walk you through this video. Big hats off to Tim. Appreciate it so much, bud. Let's talk about the VM. I'm running vSphere 7 in my lab. I've got a pile of NUCs in here and they're all bouncing around all off the walls, but we want to create this VM with 4 CPUs, 16 gig of memory, and 100 gig hard disk. Again, make sure we're using the VMXNet 3 adapter, and that's pretty much all we need to do from there. But don't think 20.10 is going to work okay. Use 20.04 LTS for Ubuntu and you'll be very pleased with the outcome. Okay, let's get to the next section. I want to show you what IP scheme that I used. If you've never set up an Ubuntu VM, there's nothing to it. It kind of walks you through the menu. I used the subnet of 192.168.00/24. The IP address was 58. The gateway's .1. And then I put my internal DNS and AD controller in there, as well as Google, the 888. My search domain is vanimal.local, and just save it from there. Okay, let's address the elephant in the middle of my office. Yes, I'm using a Mac Mini M1, 1 terabyte SSD, 16 gigs of RAM. I also have iTerm 2 that I've got Z Shell installed and a bunch of cool menus. So when you see me inside of Terminal, you're going to see all these really cool neon things, and directories are going to be different colors. It just kind of helps me get around a little bit better. But it's easy to set up and install. Maybe in another video we'll talk about it, but that's how you're going to see it if you've just got a plain green screen iTerm or shell itself. All right, now let's talk about Nano. I wanted to throw a part in here about Nano. I don't know who's used Nano or whether you know how to use it, so let's tuck this in. Sudo nano/etc/host. And then return and put our password in, and remember sudo superdoer, okay? It's going to take us into this host file, okay? And as you can see across the bottom, they're just control options. The 2 begins we're after obviously are control O, which writes it, and control X, which gets us out. Now, I've dropped down a couple lines, and I'm going to put the IP address of my VM, okay, and the control plane VM. If I can type this, okay, and then I'm going to tab again and put the fully qualified domain name in here as well. And it's vanimal.local. And we'll do a control O. We're going to save it, and we're going to exit out. And that's it. Nano is just that simple. If you have any other questions or thoughts about Nano, you can find that information out on the internet. There's all kinds of little tutorials about it, but I wanted to just show you that real quick. What I do is jump in here and update everything. The command that we've got across the line now takes us out, shows us what updates are there, and then actually runs them. Gives you a yes or no option here. We want to tell it yes. Those last 2 dots are always the 4-hour ones. And there we are. Okay, our next command we want to drop in here. Let's install Docker. Remember that we want to run sudo in front of it. And this is actually a curl script. Just 1 second, this is going to finish up. And then we're going to add the username that you have set up on this Ubuntu server into the Docker group. See right above, it's actually telling you what to drop in there. Right here. And that's, of course, my username. Just cut and paste that bad boy. Run that, and it's just going to give you back another prompt. Okay, and then from here, we're going to jump out and build a JSON script. And I'm going to have a cut and paste inside that document. You can see what you want to add in here. And this will be a blank file when you initially set it up. And then we're going to Control O and save it. Back to our prompt. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to edit the system control config file. We're going to go in here and unpound out the IP forwarding so we can have IP forward to work for us. We're going to need to forward this just a few minutes to get our dashboard to come up. But just unpound that. You're going to see it's going to change colors in just a sec. There it is. And we're going to save it with Control O. Now all we want to do is do a sudo reboot and reboot the system. The M1 Mac is just crazy fast. There are a few apps that are still out and about that aren't M1 chip compatible, but I have Brew installed on this Mac as well as Z Shell. That's why you see the little colored icons inside of my terminal window, and that's iTerm 2 for the Mac, as well as different sections and folders and file level things appear in different colors. It's because I've just installed some different menu settings inside of that. But I thought I'd share that. I've got some questions about that before, but I want to let you know. Okay, we're back from our reboot, and take a peek up top and you see that the updates are none, security updates none as well. So everything is in place as we wanted it to after the reboot. So now let's test Docker to make sure it's active and running. As you can see across the top, bright yellow, active and running. So it looks like that's good to go. And I'll Control Z out of that. Now let's do our Hello World test. I love this test. It always gives us something weird as long as it tells you that it appears to be working correctly. That's what we're after. Okay, let me cut and paste this command in here for you. All right, and now look across the top, hello from Docker. Shows that the installation appears to be working correctly, and that's exactly what we wanted to see. Good stuff there. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we're going to use curl to install kind. Shouldn't take but a second. There we go. Now we're going to do a change mod kind itself. Then we're going to move these goodies over into it. And again, the download document you're going to be able to get a hold of, it's going to have all these commands listed for you. Having them listed out makes it very simple to just cut and paste to follow along with the install video we're doing here. The next thing we're going to do is build a cluster config file. So when you open this up in Nano, it's going to be completely empty. And then I'm going to give you the information to cut and paste in here, but you'll see it on the screen in just 1 second. All right, and then we're going to save this. Control O, write it down. Control X to exit from that. Back to our prompt. And from here, we're going to use kind to create the cluster demo name using that cluster config file that we just set up. Kick this off. Now this is a really cool install. It has some of the coolest icons pop out to the right. So normally I would just kind of let this roll with some time lapse and pop to the end, but you need to see the icons. You may have noticed that I called my image the Kasten CP. It's for control plane, as you can see there now. And there we are. We are done. Well, let's check out a couple of things. Let's take a look at the control plane container. Make sure that it's actually there up and working. And it is. Demo control plane right here. Okay, we can see that that is in place and doing just fine. All right, now let's look at the actual demo to make sure that the cluster itself is there. This is the Kubernetes cluster that we created. And there it is, demo. It's up and running. All right, so things are looking good so far. Okay, we're going to use Snap to install kube control. Looks great. Okay, now we're going to jump out here and check the nodes. Let's take a peek at those real quick. There's our control plane up running. Very cool. Okay, now we're going to use Snap to install Helm. And again, you note that the kube control is a classic version, and Helm will be the same thing. We can see the version number above, 1.20.4. Let me grab this command over here, and we'll throw that in there. Okay, cool. Can run across 352. Snap Craftas. I love that name. Okay, we're going to dump a couple of repos in here now too. One from Helm itself and then one for Kasten. Pull that one over. Looks good. Now we'll throw the one for Helm out there. Let me grab this command and we'll throw it on there too. that looks good too. Kasten and the stable version of the Helms repositories. Okay, now let's create a Kasten namespace. We're going to call this Kasten-IO. Bingo, that is done. On the screen now, you can see the commands that if you want to run the Kasten pre-flight checker, that's the command line you want to use to go out and run it. It'll walk through checking that Cooper Control and Helm is out there and give you a bunch of different steps, checking consistency on it. I did not run it on this one. I've set this up 4 or 5 times prepping to do this video for you, and it works fine. But I didn't run it. It takes a few minutes to put it in place, and I wanted to keep the video a little bit more concise. So if you do want to run that checker, and if it's the first time you've done this, I recommend you do. That's the command string to do that. Okay, now we're going to use Helm to actually install Kasten. This is all the stuff we've been waiting for right here. Of course, underneath the namespace we created, boom, there it is. Pretty quick. You can see where our dashboard is going to be available at. Want to make a note of that. You're going to change that IP to your IP that you've got assigned to your VM. Now, this command allows us to watch the services get deployed, created. It's kind of cool. It takes 7-8 minutes on this VM that I did to run, so I did some time lapse on here. But now everything is up and running correctly. This is also just a Control-Z to stop that, bring you back to a prompt. And the next command is just going to be to turn our forwarding on so we can make this dashboard available for us to access from our browser. And there we have it. Things are in place, forwarding over. Bingo. And that's how your terminal session is going to be left while we're deploying the dashboard. Notice the IP in the browser up top, so you can see that it's the IP of my VM. Now we're going to get the Kasten login screen, throw a company name in there, going to throw a little bit of email address in there, and voila. The first time around, we can take a quick tour if we choose to. We can always come back to that. And of course, it'll have a lot of stuff running in there because we haven't configured it, set it up, and all the different nuances that are in there. But there's our dashboard, and it is up and accessible as of right this second. Pretty sweet. Not too difficult to do. And as I promised, up and running under 45 minutes. Check things here. We'll look at these unmanaged environments. Okay, we need to create a policy for both of those. We can also go in to our settings over there on the right-hand side. It's going to let us change the look and feel of this. Licensing, infrastructure. We can set up disaster recovery. I like mine dark. It's just a little bit easier to see my offs at night. Again, just that simple. This is not a tutorial on using Kastens. It's all about getting the demo up and running. The research that you need to do going from here and learning the product is up to you. But I've got you down the road to make it happen so you can do your learning on your own in your lab. Enjoy this. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.